You're listening to episode 154, Savannah's Story, Traumatic Birth, Micropreemie Twins, and a Cerebral Palsy Diagnosis. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Child Life on Call. This podcast is a safe place for parents to share their stories about what it's like to have a child that has a medical experience, diagnosis, disease, and or everything in between. We know there's power in sharing stories, and that power multiplies when you can listen to other parents who have walked a similar path to yours. Giving and getting advice is great, but hearing how another parent navigates the complexities and nuances of healthcare is even better. As a child life specialist, my role is to support, validate, and provide emotionally safe spaces for kids and their families, and I am so honored to be on this journey with you. In addition to parent stories, we sprinkle in some expert episodes every now and again that have content for both parents and professionals in the field of healthcare, all with the mission to empower parents to be confident advocates and partners with the care team during healthcare experiences. We're so glad you're here. Hello, my friends. I'm so glad you're here today. Today brings up a lot. So we're talking with Savannah, and as we discussed through her interview, she not only had to go through the experience of having micropreemie twins, one of which ended up having a diagnosis of CP due to brain bleeds, and another who didn't have a lot of the complications and is out of early intervention altogether, and what that experience has been like, but also the experience of having a traumatic birth. And then at the end, we really get into the nitty-gritty of maternal mental health, and we play the do a magic wand game. And I got this from Malcolm Gladwell, if you listen to his podcast at all, but it's that magic wand. What would you do if you could do anything? And I think it's just representative of the fact that so much maternal mental health goes undiagnosed, because when you are around care providers, like in the NICU, or you're at the doctor's office, at your OB or the pediatrician, you're so focused on the child that sometimes the signs and symptoms of maternal mental health don't come to the surface, right? Or aren't discovered. And so where in the system can we place them? But the other really great point she makes is that sometimes the system is actually that mother tribe that you have, and those people that you've never met, but you know them online and you know each other's stories so well. So just your food for thought today. We do mention some great organizations for maternal mental health, March of Dimes, Hand to Hold, Dear NICU Mama, Hope for HIE. All of these are great maternal mental health, especially when there's been a traumatic birth or you have had a child who's spent time in the NICU. So, all right, everybody, here is Savannah. Before we jump into the episode, I wanted to let you guys know that if you are a parent, a child life specialist, or professional working with children, you're going to want the hospital or physician's office or urgent care that you take your kids to have the Child Life On Call app. It is an evidence-based tool designed to empower children and families during medical experiences. And 100% of the child life specialists who have used this app believe that it can help with expanding child life's reach beyond the bedside. And 100% of child life specialists believe it helps parents feel more empowered in their child's care. Learn how to get the Child Life On Call app for your facility or doctor's office by going to childlifeoncall.com/partners.
Well, my name is Savannah Jane O'Malley. I live in Tacoma, Washington with my husband and my 3 beautiful former preemie children. I am an advocate for mothers of children with disabilities like cerebral palsy, which my son has, and I am a spreader of reckless hope when it comes to mothers in the NICU and going through and processing a traumatic birth.
I love that, a spreader of reckless hope. How did you come to kind of put that vision statement together?
Well, my twins were born at 24 weeks, very, very unexpectedly and very traumatically. And shortly after that, I just had, even while I was still in the NICU, I just had this feeling that all I wanted to hear and see were stories of hope. I didn't want to hear anything negative or anything scary. All I wanted was a glimmer of hope, especially in the hardest of times. And since my twins spent 101 days in the NICU and have survived and have gone on to thrive, my entire mission has been to be that hope that I needed when I was going through the thick of it.
I think that's such an important perspective. And actually, we just talked about this on a podcast earlier with Ashley and Martha from Dear NICU Mama. And they have a very similar mission that, like, you're just getting statistics and all of this evidence and research from your care team. And so what you get from other moms and other parents, though, a lot of times is hope. And that's the most important thing.
I completely agree.
Well, talk to us, I guess, a little bit about the beginning. I know that you have a big focus on traumatic births, and I think it's such an important topic because I am totally obsessed with supporting caregivers. And I really feel like our kids are going to thrive no matter the situation when our caregivers feel supported. So I know you've kind of made that your mission here, but do you want to take us back to, 24 weeks is so early, but whatever your experience was like at the beginning, just letting us know a little bit about what went on then.
Yeah, absolutely. Just having a twin pregnancy alone put me at high risk, but I did have a history of preterm labor with my first pregnancy and my daughter. She ended up just, very typical birth and was very healthy. She was a late term preemie. And so I went into the pregnancy with the twins with optimism and was maybe even overly optimistic, if that's a thing, and was admitted with some preterm labor signs and was still almost naively optimistic that I was going to be sent home on bed rest. And then within 24 hours or so, everything just happened so fast, and I went into labor. They were unable to stop the labor, and I was sent to the operating room to deliver twins at 24 weeks via C-section.
How long ago is this? How old are your twins now?
The twins just turned 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering for other, moms out there who have gone through a traumatic experience, how long did it take for you to start kind of talking about what you had gone through?
I found when I was in the NICU, I have no medical experience previously, and so when I was in the NICU, I was very reactive and was desperate for information, and I would have wanted to get a doctorate in that time just so I could understand the challenges that my boys were facing. And I found really quickly that just writing was therapeutic and healing. And so maybe day 3, day 4 after they were born, I would just write things that doctors were saying and information about how I was feeling or different challenges that we were going through. And so writing became my outlet. And then when they were about a year old, I decided to open that journal that I had taken and start telling the real raw story of what had happened. Because while I was living it, I think I wanted to remain optimistic, but I also cared a lot about my friends and family around me, and I wanted them to see that things were going well. But really no one except for my husband and my close immediate family knew how scary and how bad the twins were doing at times. And so writing just was healing for me and has continued to be healing.
I think that's pretty incredible that you had the foresight at the bedside, which, when babies are so early, there's not a lot to do at the bedside, but it's like you want to be there all of the time, right? And these are your babies, but having something to do while you're there, it can feel almost awkward at times. I've worked in the NICU before, and those parents who come in, and even if it's something as simple as knitting, as like scrolling Instagram, in your case, writing in a journal, just having something to do sometimes can be really helpful.
It truly gave me purpose and made me feel like I was a mother at the times when I didn't at all.
Had you journaled before in your life, or was this the first time?
Writing and creativity, any kind of creation has been something that's always been a part of my life, and it usually comes out with art. I'm a painter, but I'm also a writer, and so those worlds have kind of combined and allowed me to tell our story.
Well, tell us a little bit about your story and what it was like in the NICU and processing your traumatic birth.
Yeah, so the twins were born at 24 weeks, 5 days gestation, and they each weighed 1 pound, 10 ounces each. Shortly after their birth, we found out both boys had suffered brain bleeds. My boys' names are Lachlan and Lex, and let's see, they both had struggles with their heart. They had PDAs, which are unclosed heart valves, and between the brain bleeds and their heart and their little lungs, they were almost immediately intubated. Their little bodies were working so hard, and their health began to decline pretty quickly, which turned into my son Lex having his first surgery when he was 4 weeks old. He weighed a little over 2 pounds, and he had a heart surgery to close his PDA. And then the following week, my son Lachlan had his first brain surgery, which the surgery itself caused a second severe brain bleed. And because of the brain bleeds, he has developed hydrocephalus, which is a condition that he'll live with the rest of his life, and also had brain damage. My son Lex went on to develop pretty typically, and we see no evidence that his brain bleed has affected his development at all. But as I say, Lachlan was given higher mountains to climb. He has a cerebral palsy diagnosis, and then, as I said, the hydrocephalus as well. So his journey, he has developmental delays, and he has to work harder to do the things that most of us take for granted.
That's so much to have to go through. I'm honestly sitting here tearing up thinking about you going through such a traumatic birth, dealing with all of those obstacles. What have you found has helped you the most kind of beyond writing? When you were in those moments and just trying to get through, was it a partnership with your husband? Was family able to kind of help you pick up the pieces? I know you have another little one at home who was probably, I'm guessing, I'm just doing math here, like 2 when the twins were born. How did you manage all of that going through then?
Yeah, my daughter is 2 years old, or was 2 years old when the twins were born, and she was old enough to know something wasn't right, but young enough to not take on the traumas of it so much. We were incredibly lucky and blessed to have a strong support system. My husband and I were also lucky that this experience helped us grow closer together. And surrounding our little family unit, our parents, both sets of parents, and aunts and uncles and cousins and friends just were there to help us in any way. So that definitely helps get us through. The other thing that helped almost equally as much as family and friends was connecting with other mothers who were going through something similar or who had been through something similar. And that is something those connections I would never have made without social media. So when I began sharing on social media, it opened a whole new world, because I have only met 2 other mothers of micro-preemies in real life over these last 5 years. I know there's a lot of us, but there's also not a lot of us.
Yeah.
And just finding that somebody else has been there is such a powerful thing for moms like us.
I couldn't agree more. And it's the whole reason we started this podcast too, right? Because sometimes you're in the mood to talk and sometimes you're not. Sometimes you just want to listen and digest information too without having to give a whole lot. And I love social media for that reason. I love podcasting for that reason. I just think it's, like you said, just equally as important as that physical support system is that other mom out there who's like, I've got you, I've been through this, or I'm going through this.
Yes.
How did you communicate with the care team? Were you somebody who really liked like all the details and you wanted to know exactly what was going to happen? Were you somebody who was like, tell me the need to know? And how did you navigate that whole world of getting thrown into a hospitalization and basically becoming like a micro-preemie twin expert at this point?
Mm-hmm. I remember when, right around their birth, desperately wanting to ask, what are chances of survival? I wanted to know the answer to that question, but I was terrified of the answer. And nobody in the medical team ever offered that or asked me that question, which I think is the way, for me personally, the way it needed to go. I needed to not know that information. And we became really close with definitely the nurses. The nurses were almost a filter with doctors. But we became very comfortable asking questions, asking them again and again and again until we got the answer that we needed to hear. I think it's very intimidating to be thrown into a medical situation like that when you don't understand what's going on or what the different monitors mean or the sounds. Once we became comfortable with asking questions, even if we felt like they were stupid questions, it felt a little empowering. And I think it's so important to ask all the questions.
I love that advice. I like, ask the question, even if you've asked it 100 times. It's going to take sometimes that many times to hear it to be able to process it, as you know, when you're exhausted and so overwhelmed. And I have never, in all my years of working clinically, had a doctor say, this person asked this question too many times, because they just as badly want to communicate like what is happening. So I think that's really good advice. I like that. And you kind of find your rhythm too, right? Like it doesn't happen overnight, but you're like, oh, I said something and something changed, or I said something and I got an answer. And those little things can just build on each other.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to us a little bit about what it's been like growing up with, I know one of your twins has the disability of CP, like you talked about, and you've become quite an advocate and just such an advocate for your son, but for other moms who have had traumatic births. What has it been like over the past few years, I guess now, since you're kind of entering getting out of the early intervention things with one of your twins, and walk us through what life has been like lately?
After coming home from the hospital with former micropreemie twins, we had sometimes 5 doctor appointments a week. And at that time they were on oxygen and monitors, and I would I would tow all of these things to doctor's appointments with chilled breast milk and a thermos full of hot water and all the things. So it was a lot to try and manage and deal with. But even though that was so much to try and manage, I think the hardest thing that I did to myself was have fears and assumptions about what my son's life would be like and how he would be treated. Because the things I worried about when we first got diagnosis are not even a factor in his life today. I now truly look at the present and meet him where he's at, and any other developments or gains or things he accomplishes are just that more celebrated. I feel like when you start putting expectations, good or bad, then you just kind of drive yourself crazy and you end up wasting a lot of energy, unnecessary energy. And if you're in the NICU, unnecessary energy you don't have to waste.
I think that's so great. It's literally that live in the moment. The little things are the big things.
It really is. One thing I say about my son now, so Lachlan is 5. He does not walk independently. His preferred mode of mobility would be crawling around. Although he progresses every week, he'll use a walker or a handle to kind of cruise around. So we think he'll probably walk. If he doesn't, that's fine too. But it kind of seems like that's where he's trending. The one thing that I've learned about him, and aside from any pain that he suffered, I wholeheartedly mean this when I say I would not change a single thing about who he is. I look at him, and all of his delays are things that it truly has made him and his personality who he is. His brother, Lex, who's equally amazing, is on the go all the time and was an early walker and just into everything. Whereas Lachlan didn't crawl until he was about 2.5 years old. And because of that, he had to figure out, because he couldn't run across the room to greet a family or friend, he had to figure out how to bring people to him. And if you were to meet Lachlan, he is socially advanced, he's charming and witty, and people just fall in love with him. And so I think because he had certain physical delays, he has a pretty amazing, engaging personality. And it's truly his delays and his disability that have made him so amazing and special.
Ma'am, that's my favorite question, is asking what's special, about your child and your children. And I, just from the pictures you sent over that I can't wait to share, like, he's got that look in his eye that's like, you are going to love me. And I saw that even through the pictures.
It's true. And he's been through so much too.
And now a word from our sponsor. We're so grateful to have Pain-Ease Instant Topical Anesthetic Spray as our sponsor of today's podcast. Help control pediatric procedural pain associated with needle procedures and minor surgical procedures while improving patient satisfaction. Pain-Ease Instant Topical Anesthetic Spray works immediately. It is a non-drug and non-flammable topical spray that can be used to temporarily relieve the pain associated with minor surgical procedures and needle procedures. Pain-Ease is a medical device and does not contain medication. It can be a safe and effective alternative for lidocaine injections when used to temporarily control pain associated with immunizations, IV starts, blood draws, foreign body removals, and suturing or suture removal, to name a few. Pain-Ease works on a 3-step process. First, prepare the site and equipment for the procedure per your facility's protocol. Second, apply Pain-Ease by spraying about a can's distance away for 4 to 10 seconds or until the skin begins turning white. Finally, perform the procedure. The anesthetic effect of Paineys lasts about 1 minute and can be reapplied as many times as necessary. Refer to application instructions for full details. Important risk and safety information. Consult your pediatrician when using on children 4 years old and younger. Do not use on large areas of damaged skin, puncture wounds, animal bites, or serious wounds. Do not spray in eyes. Overspraying may cause frostbite. Freezing may alter skin pigmentation. Use caution when using product on persons with poor circulation. Apply only to intact oral mucous membranes. Do not use on genital mucous membranes. The thawing process may be painful and freezing may lower resistance to infection and delay healing. If skin irritation develops, discontinue use. Caution: federal law restricts this device to sale by or on the order of a licensed healthcare practitioner. Study suggests that Paineys does not induce vasoconstriction, does not contaminate a site that has been cleansed, and is preferred by patients and practitioners. Paineys comes in 2 different spray pattern variations, medium stream and mist. It is also available in 2 sizes, 3.9 ounces or 1 ounce single patient. Gebauer appreciates the care and comfort that you provide to pediatric patients. Visit gebauer.com/Paineys with no space to learn how Paineys can make visits more comfortable.
I say his motto is just happy to be here. And he is.
Yeah. What have the boys taught you about yourself, maybe that you didn't know before you became their mom?
The twins have taught me so much. They have taught me to truly stay in the present, especially during the NICU, where people will tell you to take things one day at a time. When you're in the NICU, it feels like you're there for eternity, and sometimes you have to take it one breath at a time. And that's how we survived and got through it. And I learned really quickly that if I were to start worrying about all these things that could happen, then I would go crazy. And so I was forced to say, okay, here's what we have. Here is all the things we have today, and we're not going to worry about anything other than any challenge that's on our plate right here, right now, because we can't. And so they've definitely taught me how to live in the present and to not worry about small things. They've also taught me the resilience of the human body, knowing that a 1-pound baby can survive has shown me everything that I myself am capable of. It's true. They've shown me true strength. I really believe that it wasn't any kind of strength within myself that helped me get through the NICU. It was the strength that they had, they were able to give me.
Just by simply being who they are, right? And who they were born to be.
It's just showing me what true strength is.
And then I have the opportunity to hear from you, you've gotten strength from your twins. Now I continue to want to do what I'm doing because of you. You're touching so many people with your cards of hope and all that you've done. And it just came from your twins, which is pretty remarkable.
It is. It's really touched a lot. I mean, I can't even imagine how many people it's truly touched. But they've set ripples into this universe.
Well, I'd love to hear a little bit about what you do now and what your mission is. And I know you have such a loyal and loving following on Instagram and your cards of hope. So talk to us about what you do.
I started Cards of Hope just a few months ago. I launched it. And prior to that, I had been trying to figure out how to combine my passion for art and painting with all these mothers of traumatic birth that I have met along the way. And it hit me out of nowhere. This is how you do it, Cards of Hope. And so what I do is for any mother of traumatic birth that wants a piece of art, they sign up on my website with the day they gave birth, their address, their name, and their email. And then there's a section that says, is there anything else you want to add? Which is not required. But when they sign up, I send them a little piece of art, a print of one of my paintings, as well as a personal card with a little note from me, just simply letting them know that they are not alone with all the feelings that come up around a date of birth. Mm-hmm. What's been very powerful about this little project is in that section where I ask, is there anything else you want to add? Almost every mother pours their heart out. Mm-hmm. And I hear things like, I didn't know traumatic birth was so common. You've made me feel less alone. I struggled with PTSD and postpartum depression and anxiety and all these things. And you've made me feel that there are a lot of us. And you brought light to this thing that I don't think us as a society is talking about enough, which is traumatic birth. I think it's far more common. So this Cards of Hope, I have about 300 mothers who've signed up so far, and wow. I get sign-ups every week, and it's cathartic and healing for me to give to these mothers what I wished I had in the past.
Oh my gosh, that is amazing. 300 already?
Yes, it's amazing.
Wow. That just shows you how important connection is, and that you get to add the element of you through your art is so special.
It's very special, and I feel honored that I was able to communicate this idea in a way that people could understand it, and it's clearly resonated with a lot of mothers.
Tell us a little bit about how you have processed your traumatic birth.
After the twins were born, I was truly in survival mode, and I would say was in survival mode until they were almost 2 years old. The closer they got to 2 years old, I kind of started feeling more and more anxious with just everyday things, and slowly my anxiety began to grow to the point it was debilitating, and I was really struggling to understand what was going on. With everything that happened on paper, I looked like I was doing well and thriving. I was working. The twins were getting everything they need, as well as my daughter. But inside, I was crumbling. And I began seeking medical help to deal with this anxiety. And nobody was diagnosing it with anything that seemed to be helpful with me. And on top of just life, it's hard. I think it's very difficult for mothers to make time to go get help for themselves because they're mothering and just doing life. And so I was very discouraged going to see medical professionals and my symptoms being dismissed. At one point, a doctor told me I was probably just exhausted, which I think that's a whole nother story, but I think that's a very dangerous thing to tell somebody who's coming to them for help. And I ended up finding a nurse practitioner who sat down with me and truly heard me for the first time in 2 years. And until then, I hadn't felt I was deserving of the feeling of grief because my twins were alive. And what she said to me that day truly changed everything. she said to me, do you even realize that parents of pediatric cancer patients, do you realize that they go through the same thing that you've gone through? And for some reason, those words made sense to me that, yeah, that's a lot to go through, isn't it? And it was the first time I felt somebody had given me the gift to grieve. And once I felt it was okay to grieve all of the things that didn't happen in my pregnancy and birth and those first few months, and to grieve the things that couldn't happen, I was able to begin to heal. And I think all of that is wrapped up in the traumatic birth, where your baby can survive and you can still experience trauma from it. And that's the piece I don't think we're talking about enough.
I couldn't agree more. Just from my own perspective and hearing stories, for the podcast, working with patients and families, when you go through something with your child and when your own life is threatened, you're going to have a certain amount of grief and so many emotions to have to process. And what I hear from you is that you went to a doctor, you didn't hear what you needed, and then you continued seeking help. And I think that's another message, is keep going till you find the right person, because there's going to be somebody out there. And that's when to pull on your mom network too and say, like, who do you see? How can I get in touch with them? What is available online? What resource can I get to so that I can get the help I need?
Yes. Keep trying. And I also think that the caregivers, we are so wrapped up in, especially mothers, in taking care of our children, that we do put our needs aside. And I understand all the reasons for that, but you're not going to be, I don't think you can raise a very healthy child if you're not healthy yourself. So I think it really starts with the caregiver and receiving proper help in order to raise the best child you can possibly.
I agree. And I wish there was more access, when you're in the NICU and you're processing all of this, and, say if a social worker even came by and started talking to you about PTSD and some signs and symptoms, it's just not the right time to absorb that, because for some people it's not the right time, because you're in this fight or flight mode, like literally wondering what's going to happen during the next touch time, right? Like not even the next day, the next touch time. It's these like follow-up appointments, these early intervention meetings. Like maybe that's the place where we really start to look at maternal mental health for these moms who have gone through traumatic birth. Just somewhere in the system, if we can build it in. I'm doing the whole magic wand theory, by the way, right now, where I just pretend that we can do anything we want. But like, where are those places? And I think what you found is it's other moms, but also if there was something in the system, these follow-up, OBGYN appointments. I know they do that a little bit, but I think that 2-year mark is pretty substantial.
I can't agree with you more, and I like your magic wand. But I think,
let's just do it.
But I don't think it's far-fetched. I think that's what needs, that there is change that needs to happen. All of my postpartum depression screenings and things like that were at the pediatricians, or I did have a social worker while in the NICU. And I did not have the symptoms. I did not have a red flag until the twins were okay or felt safer. And then I think my body allowed me to realize how heavy this weight I had been carrying for 2 years was.
Right.
And it was crushing. And so I agree. Let's find that magic wand. It's
so brave too, because it's like in your head, I do this. I have anxiety too. And I rationalize all the time. Like, I would be like, the twins are getting better. I should be getting better. It doesn't make sense that I feel this way. So the fact that you continue to reach out and get help after that, and then you finally got it. But it doesn't always have to go in order. Like, because things are okay doesn't mean that you have to be okay.
Yes. I think that what you just said right there is what us mothers need to hear. That, yeah, your child can be healthy. Everything can be good on paper, but that does not mean that anxiety or depression will come visit you or show themselves at places, and I think it's important. It's really important to realize that a healthy, surviving child does not mean that there wasn't trauma that needs to heal.
100%. Are there any other organizations that you really loved? I know a couple right now is Hope for HIE, which I think is an amazing organization for kids who have brain injuries right at birth. Hand to Hold, March of Dimes. What other organizations do you know about, or did you benefit from?
My favorite organization right now is Beads of Courage.
Yay! Shout out Beads of Courage.
I love Beads of Courage and what they do for little kids, or just children in general, who it's hard to explain what we're doing medically for children. And with my kiddos, most of their beads were acquired while they're in the NICU. And so now we have thousands of beads to show them what they went through, which I think is such a powerful symbol. And Beads of Courage I just think it's amazing what they're doing for kids.
I couldn't agree more. Beads of Courage, go find them. They even have a mail-in program. So if your hospital doesn't have one, they have free child life services support for siblings, for families. They're just one of my favorite organizations. So I'm so glad that you brought them up. Well, Savannah, if and when the parents and professionals who are listening to this podcast want to come follow along with you, how can they do that? How can they get to your website? And are you okay with, I know there's a lot of child life specialists that listen to this, if they refer your cards of hope to other, parents they work with in the NICU or in the hospital?
I would absolutely love that. I've created and am creating a series of hope, is what I'm calling it, these paintings. Most of them are butterflies and flowers and just light, beautiful, happy images. And those are the images that I'm turning into cards of hope. And through the sales of prints and originals, that is what's funding Cards of Hope. So far, I've been able to send out every card of hope to every mother who has requested one. And I hope that it only continues to grow. So I absolutely welcome anyone who wants to sign up for a Card of Hope. I am very active on social media, on Instagram, as well as TikTok and a little bit of Facebook. My handle on all of them is Savvy Jane O'Malley, and I spell Savvy S-A-V-Y, which is my nickname. Also my website is savvyjane.com, and you can reach me there as well.
I love that. And so we can either go buy your prints, which will fund a Card of Hope for a mom, or we can send moms directly to your website, or if you are a mom, you can go directly to your website. I just think there's so many opportunities. So thank you so much for being here today. And I've loved our conversation, and just can't wait to see more of what you do and what you create.
Oh, thank you. It's truly my honor.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Child Life On Call podcast. The only reason this podcast keeps on going is because of you and listeners like you. So please join in on the conversation with us on Instagram, Facebook, I'm even on TikTok now, y'all, making a fool of myself. I haven't danced yet, but maybe it's coming. You can find us at Child Life on Call. We also have a website, and that has all of our information about the Child Life Circle, about the Child Life on Call app, and a blog with new information all the time. That's childlifeoncall.com. Thank you again from the bottom of my heart for listening to these episodes and being a part of this community. We are so grateful and so honored to be able to provide this for you.
For those of you who are joining us today, I am not a doctor. I'm not a therapist. I am a child life specialist. And the suggestions and tips and resources that I talk about with parents on this podcast may be great for you and they may not be right for you. So the most important person you can talk to about getting support is your care team, your doctor who knows your story and your child's story. So regardless of maybe what I mention or what other families mention here, we're not licensed therapists, we're not doctors. We're having a conversation about what the parenting journey has been like. So please keep that in mind as you listen today.